He fired her coldly, certain she was just another page turned. But when he saw her flee, carrying a secret capable of destroying everything he held dear, the millionaire realized he might have lost far more than he imagined. If you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We post daily. Continuing. The morning was cold when Marina awoke, as she had for 7 years, at 5:30. The first rays of sun barely penetrated the slats of the blinds in her Notting Hill, London apartment when her eyes were already open, staring at the white ceiling. She didn't need an alarm clock. Her body had conditioned itself to an almost mechanical precision, like all other parts of her carefully organized existence. Without wasting time, she got up and went to the bathroom. Her reflection in the mirror revealed a 38-year-old woman with delicate features, a piercing gaze, and impeccable posture. Dark hair cut to shoulder length, always as perfectly aligned as her outwardly organized life appeared to be. She dressed with the discreet elegance that had become her trademark: a black pencil skirt, a pearl grey silk blouse, and moderate-heeled shoes. The pearl necklace, a wedding gift, remained on her neck as a reminder of what had been, what would never be again, but which she inexplicably couldn't let go of. She drank her black coffee unsweetened, organized her Italian leather bag, and descended to the garage, where her black Audi A3 awaited her. Punctually at 6:20 a.m., she left to face the London traffic which, at that hour, still allowed for a relatively smooth commute. Upon entering the imposing mirrored glass building in Canary Wharf, Marina's heart beat at its usual controlled rhythm. The Vance Group occupied the top 10 floors of the building, a British tech giant expanding internationally under the visionary leadership of Gregory Vance. The same Gregory who had once been her husband, the same man who was now merely Mr. Vance in the corporate corridors, she navigated with the natural ease of someone who knew every corner, every secret, every shortcut. "Good morning, Miss Marina," the security guard greeted her, with a respect mixed with the curiosity everyone there held for her. "Good morning, Charles. How is your daughter?" "Better, thank God. The medicine you recommended worked." Marina nodded with a discreet smile. She knew every employee by name, their families, their problems, not out of obligation, but because, behind her apparent coolness, there was a woman who genuinely cared, who retained information, who saw people where others saw only functions. It was one of many details that made her irreplaceable. By 6:45 a.m., she was already in her office, spacious, elegant, with a view of the waking city. She turned on her computer and checked the day's agenda, everything meticulously organized as always. At 7:30 a.m., Gregory would arrive. At 8 a.m., the first meeting. Throughout the day, a succession of appointments, decisions, emails, calls, the perfect mechanism she helped keep running. The private elevator announced Gregory Vance's arrival precisely on schedule. Tall, imposing, his 45 years marked by an almost fierce determination. He wore a tailored Italian suit, a gold watch on his left wrist, and slightly grayed brown hair at his temples, giving him an air of unquestionable authority. "Good morning, Marina." Agenda? Not a "how are you?" Not a smile. Just the objectivity that had marked their relationship since the divorce. Marina showed no surprise or disappointment. Not anymore. "Good morning, Mr. Vance. Meeting with investors at 8 a.m. Video conference with the Berlin team at 10 a.m. Lunch with the technology secretary at 1 p.m. And at 4 p.m., the presentation of the new system to the directors." Gregory nodded without looking directly at her. "Coffee is already in your office. The reports are on your desk, and the documents for the investor meeting are printed and in the blue folder." "Anything else?" Paul Mitchell, from Digital Security, asked for 5 minutes before the 8 a.m. meeting. He said it was urgent. Something in Gregory's expression shifted, like an almost imperceptible tremor on still water. "Tell him I don't have time today. He should speak with the IT director." Marina hesitated for a second. She knew Gregory well enough to sense when something bothered him, but her role was not to question. It was to execute as you wish. He walked into his office, leaving behind only the scent of his expensive cologne and an almost palpable tension. Marina took a deep breath. Years ago, she would have followed him, asked what was bothering him, touched his arm, and felt his skin beneath her fingers. Now, she typed a message to Paul Mitchell, informing him that Mr. Vance could not see him. The morning unfolded as planned. Marina coordinated the investor meeting, arranged the connections for the video conference with Berlin, and booked the restaurant table for lunch. A corporate ballet executed with the precision only she could maintain. In a break between appointments, Caroline Miller, marketing director, and one of the few people Marina considered a friend in that environment, entered her office without knocking. "This place is going to drive me crazy one day," Carol blurted out, throwing herself into the armchair opposite Marina's desk. At 35, with red hair and a strong temperament, she was the opposite of Marina's discretion. "How can you stand working for your ex-husband? And don't give me the usual excuse that it's just a job." Marina smiled faintly. "It's just a job, Carol, and I'm the Queen of England. Seriously, Mai. It's been 4 years since the divorce. The company has grown. You could be anywhere. Why stay here, enduring his moods, being the perfect shadow of the great Gregory Vance?" The question everyone asked, the question she herself asked on lonely nights in her apartment. "I built this with him. I knew every stage, every decision, every defeat, and every victory. It would be like abandoning a child." Carol shook her head, incredulous. "A child who doesn't recognize your worth. Me, yesterday at the board meeting, when they presented the last quarter's results. Not once, not a single time, did he mention your name, as if everything was his exclusive merit. And that would surprise me because—" Marina smiled with an irony she rarely showed. "He's always been like that, Carol, even when we were married. Which brings me to the next question. Why did you marry him?" Marina looked out the window at the city stretching beneath a sky that threatened rain. For an instant, she allowed herself to remember. The university, where she studied design and he, engineering. The joint project that became the seed of what would be the Vance Group. The shared dreams, the sparkle in his eyes when he spoke of the future, the way their hands intertwined as they worked through the nights in the small apartment they shared. "Because he was different, or I believed he was." The phone interrupted the conversation. It was the reception, announcing the arrival of the technology secretary for lunch. Marina immediately returned to her professional demeanor. "I need to go, Carol. Please tell the communications team that we need the release about the new system by the end of the afternoon. And please, ask the design team to redo the presentation slides. Mr. Vance didn't like the color palette." Carol stood up, sighing. "Mr. Vance didn't like it. As if you hadn't personally approved every detail of that presentation. He doesn't even understand design." "Carol, I know, it's just a job. I'll tell the team. But one of these days, we need to have a serious talk about you getting your life back, friend." When Carol left, Marina allowed herself a moment of fragility. Her friend was right. What was she doing there? Why did she stay? The answer she gave to others and to herself about professional value, about building the company together, was true but incomplete. There was more, much more. At lunch with the technology secretary, Marina stayed a few steps behind Gregory, as always. She observed, took notes, and smiled at the right moments. She noticed when he lightly touched his phone in his pocket upon receiving a message, the way his jaw tightened for a second. Something was wrong. She knew those signs. Back in the office, while organizing documents for the afternoon presentation, she heard raised voices coming from Gregory's office. She immediately recognized the second voice, Paul Mitchell, the same man who had requested a meeting that morning. Without thinking twice, Marina walked to the door and knocked softly. The silence was immediate. Upon entering, she found Gregory standing tense, his face marked by contained fury. Paul, a 28-year-old programmer, looked terrified. "Is there a problem, Mr. Vance? Can I help with anything?" Gregory stared at her coldly. "No, Marina. Mr. Mitchell was just leaving, and if he knows what's good for his career, he won't comment on this conversation with anyone." Paul lowered his head and left quickly, without looking at Marina. When they were alone, Gregory walked to the window, turning his back to her. "Cancel the 4 p.m. presentation." "How? The directors are all confirmed. The room is prepared. The materials." "Cancel it, Marina." His voice cut the air like a blade. "Say I had an unforeseen emergency, reschedule it for next week, and call Robert Campbell to my office immediately." Robert was the IT director, responsible for the company's system security. Marina's heart quickened. In 15 years of working with Gregory, first as his girlfriend, then wife, and now as executive assistant, she knew the signs of an impending crisis. Gregory, what's happening? The use of his first name, something she hadn't done in years in the company corridors, showed her genuine concern. For an instant, he seemed to falter. He turned to her, and Marina saw something rare in his eyes: fear. Someone invaded our central system, accessed restricted information. Paul discovered digital traces this morning. We don't know the full extent of the damage yet, but it could be catastrophic. Marina felt her blood run cold. The central system held not only corporate data, but intellectual property, projects in development, future strategies. The entire heart of the company could be compromised. Who would do this? Competitors? Or someone internal? His expression darkened. Someone with deep knowledge of our security protocols. That's why I need Robert here, now. Marina nodded and left to carry out the orders. As she closed the door, she allowed herself a moment of genuine panic. She knew, like few others, how much Gregory had sacrificed to build the Vance empire. How much they both had sacrificed. The idea of seeing everything crumble was unbearable, even after the divorce, even after everything. The rest of the day turned into a whirlwind. Emergency meetings, security technicians nervously moving about, confidential phone calls. Marina coordinated everything with her usual efficiency, but she felt the tension growing by the hour. Robert Campbell, after a long meeting with Gregory, left the office with a heavy expression. In the corridors, whispers began to spread. Something serious was happening. When the last employee had left, and only the emergency lights illuminated the empty corridors, Marina knocked on Gregory's door. There was no answer. She entered anyway, finding him sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his jacket thrown over the armchair. "Everyone's gone. I heard you and Robert decided to make an announcement tomorrow," she said, maintaining a respectful distance. "We discovered the extent of the damage." His voice sounded tired, almost defeated. "Whoever did this gained access to Project Iris. All the files, all the tests, all the results." Marina felt the air leave her lungs. Project Iris was Gregory's pet project, an artificial intelligence system for medical diagnostics that could revolutionize the market. 3 years of intense work, millions invested. But how? Access was restricted to you, Robert, and you, he completed, looking directly at her for the first time that day. His eyes, usually self-assured, now conveyed a mixture of anger, disappointment, and something else, something she couldn't identify. Only 3 people had full access. Marina, 3. The silence that followed was deafening. Marina felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Was he implying, "You can't be thinking that I don't know what to think," he cut in, standing up abruptly. "I only know that you know every detail of this company, every password, every code, every contract. I know you could easily betray everything I helped build." Her voice trembled slightly, more from indignation than fear. "After 15 years dedicated to this place, after sacrificing my marriage, my dreams, my identity for this company." "Your marriage," he laughed humorlessly. "You chose the divorce, Marina. You left that house." "Because there was no house anymore, Gregory. There was only the company, only the next project, the next investor, the next success. There was no room left for us. For me." He approached, his eyes fixed on hers, so close she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "So that's it? Revenge? After all these years pretending loyalty, you finally decided to destroy me?" Marina's hand struck his face before she could control herself. The sound of the slap echoed through the silent room. His eyes widened in shock. "How dare you?" Her voice came out in a whisper laden with contained emotion. "How dare you even suggest I would be capable of that? If I wanted to destroy you, Gregory, I would have done it the day I signed the divorce papers. I would have taken half of everything, as was my right. I would have exposed to the world how the great tech genius treats his wife, his partner, the woman who helped build his empire. But I didn't, because, unlike you, I truly cared about this company, about what we built. Silent tears began to stream down her face, tears she had held back for years in carefully locked boxes within herself. If anyone betrayed something here, it was you. You betrayed what we had, what we dreamed of together. You turned our dream into your exclusive property. And even so, even after everything, I stayed. I continued to be your loyal shadow, organizing your life, protecting your interests. And this is how you thank me. By accusing me of sabotage. Gregory recoiled, rubbing his hand over his slapped face. Something in his eyes changed, as if a curtain had been briefly pulled back, revealing the man she had known years ago. Marina, His phone rang, cutting the moment. It was Robert. After a brief conversation, Gregory hung up, his expression transformed. We found them. It was an external attack, sophisticated hackers, probably working for our biggest competitor. Robert identified the origin. Relief washed over Marina like a wave, leaving her momentarily dizzy. For a terrible instant, she had feared he truly believed in her guilt, that this was the end of everything. That's good, she managed to say, composing herself and discreetly wiping away her tears. What happens now? Now? He looked at her, the corporate mask back in place, as if the moment of vulnerability had never existed. Now you cancel all my appointments for tomorrow. I will personally go to the National Crime Agency to file the complaint, and I need you to organize a press conference for the end of the day. We'll get ahead of the situation before the news leaks. Professional, pragmatic. The Gregory Vance the world knew. Marina nodded, returning also to her efficient assistant posture. As if she had never cried, as if she had never been accused, as if she had never been his wife. I'll do everything immediately. Anything else, Mr. Vance? He hesitated, as if there was something more to say, as if the words were right there, on the tip of his tongue. But the moment passed, and the wall between them rose again. No, that's all. Marina walked towards the door, but before leaving, she turned one last time. Gregory. He looked up, surprised by the use of his first name again. Never again in your entire life doubt my loyalty, because if there's one thing that remains intact after all we've been through, it's that. And she left, gently closing the door behind her, leaving him alone with his thoughts, his whiskey, and the mark of her hand on his face. The next morning, the company was a beehive. Journalists crowded the reception, executives nervously moved through the corridors, phones rang incessantly. Marina moved with her usual apparent calm, organizing, directing, protecting. But inside, something had changed. The previous night's discussion had left invisible marks, deeper than any physical wound. The press conference was a controlled disaster. Gregory, impeccable in his dark suit, announced the hacker invasion, assuring that measures were being taken, that no customer data had been compromised, and that the company was cooperating with the authorities. His voice did not tremble, his posture did not falter. Only Marina, discreetly positioned behind the cameras, noticed the slight tremor in his hands, the almost imperceptible sweat on his forehead. In the days that followed, the crisis deepened. The specialized press speculated about the real extent of the invasion. Vance Group shares plummeted on the stock market. Investors began asking uncomfortable questions. Gregory and Marina barely spoke beyond strictly professional matters. The accusation hung between them like a ghost, even after it had been proven false. 2 weeks after the incident, on a rainy Thursday, Marina was called to Gregory's office at the end of the workday. She found him sitting behind his desk, his face unreadable. "Marina, we need to talk." She sat down, maintaining the professional posture that was her armor. "I'm listening." "The National Crime Agency investigations have progressed. They discovered how the hackers gained access to our system." Marina waited, tense. "Apparently, there was a security flaw in the remote access we created for Project Iris, a loophole that wasn't detected because—" He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, "because it was opened by someone with authorization, someone who needed this access to work after hours. And that someone would be me," he admitted, surprising her. "I asked Robert to create that access so I could review the project on weekends, at home. It was through that loophole that they got in." Marina absorbed the information in silence, So the entire crisis, the entire invasion, all the vulnerability had been created by Gregory himself, by his need for control, to always be connected to work. I see. And why are you telling me this now? He stood up, restless, and walked to the window. The rain beat furiously against the glass. Because I'm making an announcement tomorrow. I'm publicly taking responsibility for the security flaw and announcing changes in the company's management. The board has already been informed. What kind of changes? I'm stepping down temporarily from the presidency. Charles Vincent will take over while we reorganize the security structure and regain market confidence. Charles was the financial vice president, a competent man, but one who had never hidden his ambition to take Gregory's place. Marina felt an internal alarm sound. Gregory, you can't do this. Charles doesn't understand the essence of the company. He's good with numbers, but he doesn't share our vision. Our vision. He turned, an ironic half-smile on his lips. I thought there was no us anymore, Marina. You yourself said I turned our dream into my exclusive property. Her words, thrown back like stones. Marina stood firm. And that doesn't mean I've stopped caring about the future of Vance, and handing the presidency over to Charles, even temporarily, is a mistake. He will prioritize shareholder value, not innovation, not long-term projects. Like Project Iris. The bitterness in his voice was palpable, which is now probably in the hands of our competitors. We still have the team that developed it. We still have the knowledge. We can rebuild, improve, move forward, but not with Charles at the helm. Gregory stared at her for a long time, as if trying to decipher an enigma. Why do you care so much, Marina? After everything, after the things I said, the accusations, why do you keep defending this company? Defending me? The question hung in the air, heavy, inevitable. Marina looked away, unable to face the truth hidden in the answer, a truth she herself had been trying to deny for years. Because it's the right thing to do, she finally replied, because I don't leave a job unfinished. It wasn't the whole truth. They both knew that, but it was what she could offer at that moment. Anyway, Gregory continued, after a heavy silence, it's already decided. The announcement will be made tomorrow at 10 a.m. I need you to prepare the official statement and organize the transition of my files and agenda for Charles. It wasn't a request, it was an order. Marina nodded, professional as always. It will be done. Anything else? Yes. He hesitated, suddenly seeming vulnerable. I want you to stay. In the company, I mean. Charles will need someone who knows the processes, the people, the history. Someone who knows you was what he really meant. Someone who could protect him, even from a distance. The request caught her by surprise. It would be the perfect opportunity to finally cut ties, to start over somewhere else, far from the shadow of Gregory Vance. And yet, I'll think about it, was all she could say before leaving. That night, in her silent apartment, Marina replayed the proposal in her mind repeatedly. On one hand, staying at Vance under Charles's leadership meant facing a new power dynamic, perhaps even a hostile one. Charles had never hidden his irritation with her influence over Gregory. On the other hand, leaving now would be like abandoning a ship in the midst of a storm, a ship she had helped build. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Caroline, her friend from marketing. Have you heard? Her voice sounded agitated. About Gregory stepping down. Yes, he told me this afternoon. No, that's not all. I'm just leaving an emergency meeting with Charles. He's already making plans, drastic plans. He talked about cutting 30% of the staff, suspending all research projects that don't have immediate returns, selling the education division. Marina's heart raced. The education division was her personal project, developed over years. Educational software for public schools, one of the few company projects that didn't primarily aim for profit, but for social impact. He can't do that. Those projects are fundamental to our long-term strategy. Do you think he cares? For Charles, the only strategy is stock value. And guess who's at the top of the layoff list? Marina felt her blood run cold. Who? You. I heard him tell one of the directors that the era of the Queen Mother is finally over, that now he can build his own team without ghosts of the past. The metaphor couldn't be clearer. Marina was the ghost, the link to Gregory, to the company's history, something to be exorcised. "I see," she replied, surprisingly calm. "Thanks for the heads up, Carol. What are you going to do?" "What I always do, adapt, survive." After hanging up, Marina walked to her apartment window. The rain had subsided, leaving the city sparkling under the nightlights. London, immense, relentless, full of possibilities. Who would she be in this city without the identity that Vance had provided her for so many years? The answer came like a lightning bolt, sudden and clear. She would be who she always should have been, Marina Davies. Not the shadow of Gregory Vance, not the devoted ex-wife, not the irreproachable assistant, just herself, with her talents, her dreams, her unique perspective on the world. The next morning she arrived at the office earlier than usual. Gregory's office was still empty. On his desk, she left an envelope containing a single sheet of paper with her short and direct resignation letter. Beside it, a USB drive with all the files he might need during the transition, meticulously organized as everything she did. She returned to her own office and began emptying her drawers. There wasn't much to take. Her personal life had never mixed with her work environment. A few photos, a cactus that had survived for years under her methodical care, a spare pair of shoes, 15 years fit into a single box. Caroline appeared at the door, alarmed. "What are you doing?" The obvious, leaving before they kick me out. "But where are you going? What will you do?" Marina smiled, a genuine smile that hadn't lit up her face in a long time. "I don't know yet. And that's exactly what makes it so exciting." At that moment, they heard Gregory's voice in the corridor. He was talking to someone, probably Robert. Marina hurried. She didn't want confrontations. She didn't want explanations. She just wanted the clean break of a single, definitive cut. "Help me get out without him seeing me," she asked Caroline, who nodded, understanding. "Use the emergency stairs. I'll create a distraction." Marina hugged her friend briefly. "Thank you for everything. I'll call you later." With the box in her arms, she quickly descended the emergency stairs, feeling a strange lightness with each floor she left behind. In the parking lot, she put her belongings in the Audi's trunk and looked one last time at the imposing building that had housed her professional and personal life for so many years. There was no sadness, only a sense of finality, of a circle completed. She drove aimlessly through the streets of London, the morning traffic flowing around her like an indifferent river. For the first time in years, there was no agenda to follow, no meetings to organize, no expectations to meet, just her and the future, unknown and frighteningly free. Without thinking, she found herself parking in front of a cafe in Shoreditch, a charming place with rustic wooden tables and walls covered with works by local artists. She sat by the window and ordered a cappuccino. For the first time in years, she allowed herself the luxury of sugar. Small rebellions. As she savored her coffee, her phone vibrated insistently. Gregory, no doubt. He had found her letter, was confused, perhaps even furious. But Marina didn't answer. Instead, she looked around, observing the people in the cafe. Young people working on laptops, middle-aged couples in quiet conversation, a mother with a baby, lives happening, independent of the crisis at the Vance Group, independent of Gregory and his decisions, independent of herself. It was then that her eyes were drawn to the opposite wall. A series of abstract paintings, vibrant, full of movement and color. Something in those forms spoke directly to her, like a forgotten language that suddenly made sense again. She stood up and approached the works, absorbing every detail, every brushstroke. "Do you like them?" A female voice pulled her out of her trance. She turned and found herself facing a woman of about 40, with curly hair tied in a casual bun, colorful clothes, and a genuine smile. Something about her radiated authenticity, as if she occupied the space without asking the world's permission. "They're incredible," Marina replied sincerely. "There's so much movement, so much freedom." "That's exactly what I aim to express. I'm Louisa, the artist, and this cafe is mine too." "Marina Davies," she introduced herself, extending her hand. It felt strange to use her maiden name again, but it felt right. Your paintings are truly special. They talked for a while. Louisa recounted that she had been an advertising executive for 20 years before abandoning everything to dedicate herself to art and open the cafe. Marina listened, fascinated, recognizing in that journey echoes of what she herself wished to do, reinvent herself, rediscover herself. "And you?" Louisa finally asked. "What brings you here on a Thursday morning when most people are stuck in offices?" Marina smiled. "Let's just say I'm in transition. I just left a 15-year job." "Wow, that takes courage. What will you do now?" The question hung in the air, full of possibilities. Marina thought of her design background, the abandoned dreams, the ideas she never had permission to fully explore. "I don't know yet. Maybe go back to my roots. I'm a designer by training." Louisa's face lit up. "Seriously, what an incredible coincidence. I'm looking for someone to redesign the cafe's visual identity. Things are growing. I'm opening an adjoining gallery. I need something more professional. Would you be interested?" The proposal came out of nowhere, like an unexpected gift from the universe. Marina hesitated. It would be too easy, too convenient. "You don't even know me, Louisa. You don't know if I'm any good. I have a good eye for people, and for talent. Something tells me you're exactly what I'm looking for." They exchanged contacts with the promise of coffee the following week to discuss the possible project. As she left the cafe, Marina felt strangely energized, as if she had opened a door to a parallel world where other versions of herself awaited. At home, ignoring dozens of missed calls from Gregory, she sat at her desk, a beautiful piece of Scandinavian design she rarely used. She opened her personal laptop, not the corporate one she had left at the company. She created a new folder, New Beginning. Inside, she began sketching ideas for Louisa's cafe, shapes, colors, typography. Her formal design training came back as if it had never been abandoned, flowing from her fingers with surprising naturalness. She worked late into the night, lost in the creative process, forgetting dinner, forgetting time. When she finally looked at the clock, it was almost midnight. Her phone showed 10 more missed calls from Gregory and several text messages, the last one simply saying, "We need to talk. It's important." Marina sighed. She knew she would eventually have to face him, explain her decision, but not now. Not today. Today was about her, about rediscovering parts of herself that had been suffocated under the weight of responsibilities, expectations, a failed marriage, misdirected professional devotion. She lay down exhausted, but with a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. Her last thought before falling asleep was that, whatever the future held, she had taken the first step to regain control of her own story. The following days passed in a blur of creative activity. Marina immersed herself in the project for Louisa's cafe, with a passion that surprised even herself. She created not just a new logo, but an entire visual concept that united Louisa's vibrant art with the welcoming atmosphere of the space. Color palettes, custom typography, patterns for packaging, cards, menus, everything flowed as if a repressed spring of creativity was just waiting to be released. When she presented the work to Louisa a week later, the reaction exceeded her expectations. "Marina, this is perfect." Louisa's eyes shone with enthusiasm. "You captured exactly what I wanted, but what I couldn't even explain myself. I'm glad you liked it." "Liked it? I'm in love, and I'm sure my customers will love it too. But this leaves me with a problem." "What?" "I want more, much more. I have friends with small businesses, artists who need visual identity, even an independent publisher I know. Everyone needs someone with your talent, Marina. Would you consider other projects?" The proposal was tempting. Marina had forgotten how gratifying it was to see her creative work appreciated, valued. At the Vance Group, her design always had to conform to Gregory's expectations, to corporate market trends. Here, there was freedom to explore, to experiment. "I'd love to. In fact, I'm thinking of setting up my own design studio." The words came out before she could stop them, surprising even herself. Her own studio. The idea had never formed so concretely in her mind, but now that she had verbalized it, it seemed like the logical next step. Brilliant, exclaimed Louisa, enthusiastic. I can help spread the word. I know a lot of people in the art world and in small businesses, and I have a vacant space upstairs from the cafe that would be perfect for a studio. Well lit, quiet, with a view of the internal garden. The universe seemed to conspire in her favor, opening doors she didn't even know existed. Marina felt a wave of gratitude mixed with a hint of distrust. Things had never been so easy in her life. She had always had to fight for every achievement, every recognition. It's a tempting offer, Louisa, but I need to think carefully. Starting my own business is a big step. Of course, no rush. The space isn't going anywhere. But think about what I said. You have a special talent, Marina. A unique eye. Don't waste it. As she left the cafe, Marina felt her phone vibrate. This time, it wasn't Gregory, but Caroline. Where have you been? Gregory is going crazy looking for you. I'm fine, Carol. I just needed some time for myself. You won't believe what happened. Gregory cancelled the announcement of his temporary leave. He had a tense meeting with the board and said he wouldn't hand over the company to Charles, that he would personally take responsibility for the security flaw, but would remain in charge to resolve the crisis. Marina stopped on the sidewalk, surprised by the turn of events. And the board accepted. They had no choice. He's the majority shareholder, after all. But that's not all. The strangest thing is that he's different. He's talking to the teams, asking for opinions, even admitting mistakes. I've never seen anything like it. A transformation as sudden as it was improbable. Marina knew Gregory too well to believe he would change overnight. What does he say about my departure? Nothing publicly, but he's looking for you like crazy. He asks everyone if they have news of you. Marina, what exactly happened between you two? Nothing beyond what you already know, Carol. I decided it was time to go my own way. Well, whatever it is, it seems to have affected him. I've never seen him so destabilized, not even when you divorced. The conversation left Marina uneasy. She hadn't expected her departure to affect Gregory to the point of causing changes in his behavior. Perhaps it was just a temporary reaction, an adjustment to the imbalance her absence had caused in the company, or perhaps, no, she couldn't allow herself to create expectations. Gregory Vance was a man obsessed with control, power, and success. If he was changing, it was for strategic reasons, not some sudden emotional enlightenment. 2 weeks passed. Marina established a routine that surprised her with its simplicity and satisfaction. She woke up without an alarm clock, walked around the neighborhood, worked on projects for new clients who emerged through Louisa's network. She rented the space above the cafe and transformed it into a small studio, minimalist but functional. Marina Davies' design was born without fanfare, without large investments, just with genuine talent and authentic connections. On a rainy afternoon, while working on a project for an independent publisher, she heard a knock on the studio door. Imagining it was Louisa with more coffee, she said, "Come in," without looking up from her screen. Marina. The voice, deep and familiar, made her heart jump. She looked up and saw Gregory standing at the door, without his usual executive suit, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, looking strangely out of place in that artistic and unpretentious environment. "How did you find me?" was all she could say. "Caroline," he replied simply. She was very reluctant, but finally gave in. She said you seemed happy, and that I shouldn't ruin it. Marina stood up, restless. Seeing him there, in her new space, was like a collision between parallel worlds. "What do you want, Gregory?" "To talk. Just that." "About?" He looked around, observing the drawings on the walls, the color samples, the packaging prototypes. A faint smile appeared on his lips. "You're drawing again. Creating." "I never really stopped. I just directed my creativity to other areas, like organizing my life." The observation could sound ungrateful, but his tone was almost melancholic. "Among other things," she replied cautiously. "But again, what are you doing here?" Gregory walked slowly around the studio, examining the displayed works, lightly touching the paper samples, absorbing that world so different from the corporate environment he inhabited. "Your departure caused more damage than the hacker invasion," he finally said. "Robert managed to recover almost all of Project Iris. Our competitors didn't get anything truly valuable, but you took something I can't replace." "What?" He stared at her, something in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability, balance, sound judgment, the ability to see beyond numbers, beyond algorithms, to understand people, to understand me. Marina felt her heart quicken, but she stood firm. "You'll survive. You always do. It's not about surviving, Marina. It's about living, truly living." He approached, stopping a few steps from her. "I didn't come to ask you to come back. That would be selfish and unfair. You're flourishing here. Anyone can see that. I came because I needed to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you stayed so long. Why you endured everything I did, everything I said, everything I didn't see. And most importantly, why you left now, precisely when I needed you most." The question hung between them, laden with history, pain, unmet expectations. Marina hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I stayed because I believed in what we built, in the company, in the vision, in the impact we could have, and perhaps because a part of me still hoped that one day you would look around and realize I was there, not as your assistant, not as an efficient cog, but as the woman who helped build your dream, the woman you once loved." The words flowed now, years of contained feelings finally finding expression. "And I left because I finally understood that this waiting was destroying me, that I had become a shadow of myself, that I had forgotten who Marina Davies was before she became Marina Vance, and then ex-Vance, executive assistant, silent guardian of an empire that never truly recognized me." Gregory remained silent, absorbing every word like a thirsty man in the desert. His face, normally an impenetrable mask of control, now revealed a kaleidoscope of emotions: regret, understanding, sadness. "You're right," he finally said, his voice softer than Marina had ever heard since their early years together. "I turned you into an extension of my ego, of my work. I forgot that behind the efficiency was a woman with her own dreams, her own vision, her own talent." He gestured to the works displayed around them. "An extraordinary talent, I must say. I always knew you were good. But this is something different. There's soul here." Marina felt strangely touched by the recognition. For years, her creative work had been relegated to the background, always subservient to the company's needs, to Gregory's visions. Hearing him now, genuinely admiring what she created for herself, was disconcerting. "Thank you. It means a lot coming from you." "Why?" he asked in surprise. "I was never a designer." "But you were always honest in your opinions. Brutally honest, sometimes." A faint smile appeared on his lips, and for a moment Marina glimpsed the young engineer she had fallen in love with at university. Determined, brilliant, passionate about creating things that would change the world. "Well then, honestly, you're doing what you always should have done, creating beauty from chaos, giving form to ideas, making the abstract concrete." The compliment caught her off guard. They remained silent for a few moments, the sound of rain on the roof amplifying the intimacy of the moment. "Gregory, why are you really here?" she finally asked. He took a deep breath as if preparing for a deep dive. "To give back something that is yours." He pulled a black USB drive from his pocket, identical to the one she had left with her resignation letter. "Project Iris." She looked confused at the device in his hand. "I don't understand. The project belongs to Vance." "Not entirely. The technical part, yes. The algorithms, the data structure, the code, but the concept, the interface, the user experience. That was you, Marina. It was your design that made the project special. That transformed a cold artificial intelligence system into something that real people, real patients, real doctors could use with intuition and confidence." He held out the USB drive to her. "I made a copy of your original designs, your sketches, your notes. They're all here. Legally, the company still holds the rights, but morally, this belongs to you." Marina accepted the USB drive with slightly trembling hands. Iris had been her favorite project, not just for its technical complexity, but for its potential human impact. A system that could democratize medical diagnostics, bring specialized expertise to remote places, save lives. And yes, the design component had been entirely hers. The way results were presented, how doctors interacted with the system, how patients received complex information in an accessible way. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, he replied. Just know that I'm acknowledging your contribution. Lately, it's true, but genuinely. Marina put the USB drive in her drawer, not knowing exactly what she would do with it. It was a symbolic gesture, more than practical, a belated recognition, as he himself had said. How are things at the company? She asked, subtly changing the subject. Different, he sighed. I'm trying to change. It's not easy. Old habits, old structures. But your departure was a wake-up call. I realized I couldn't continue the same way. Caroline mentioned you're more approachable. I'm trying to listen more, impose less. Visit departments. Get to know people beyond performance reports. He paused. I discovered that the design team had brilliant ideas that never reached me, because I had created an environment where no one felt comfortable challenging my vision. The recognition seemed genuinely painful for him, a man who had built his identity around infallibility, absolute control. It's a start, Marina said softly. Real change takes time. Time, he repeated, thoughtfully. Something I always had so little of, always rushing, always moving on to the next milestone, the next achievement, the next challenge. I never stopped to simply be present. Marina understood the implicit reference. Their marriage had crumbled precisely because of this. Gregory was never truly present, even when physically by her side. His mind always wandered to algorithms, strategies, future markets. And she, in her devotion, had adapted to this absence, becoming increasingly efficient, more discreet, less demanding, until she disappeared as a wife and re-emerged as the perfect assistant. Did you come here to talk about regrets? She asked directly. No, he met her gaze. I came to talk about possibilities. Marina's heart involuntarily quickened. What kind of possibilities? Professional, to start with, he replied cautiously. Project Iris is progressing, but it lacks soul. It lacks your vision. I'd like to hire your studio as an external consultant, without corporate ties, without hierarchies, without me interfering in your creative process, just you and your team, working with complete freedom. The proposal was tempting. Marina missed the project, its transformative potential, but she feared old patterns, old power dynamics. What if we disagree on the project's direction? She challenged. You will have the final say on design and user experience, he replied without hesitation. It's a formal commitment. I can put it in a contract, if you prefer. Marina pondered the offer. It was surprisingly generous coming from a man known for his obsessive control over every aspect of his projects. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. He walked to the window, watching the rain that now fell softly on the cafe's small internal garden. This place suits you. It has a authenticity. Yes, I've found I like that. Spaces that don't pretend to be what they're not. People who don't wear masks. Gregory turned to face her, catching the implicit criticism. I was authentic at the beginning, you know. When we met, that idealistic kid with big dreams and little money. We were authentic together. What happened to that kid? Marina asked, genuinely curious. Success, he replied simply. Success, power, responsibility, and fear. Constant fear of losing everything, of failing, of not being enough. I never knew you were afraid. Of course not. Showing fear would be showing weakness, and in the world I inhabited, weakness was inadmissible. He sat on the edge of a table, strangely relaxed in an environment so different from the corporate spaces he usually frequented. But you know what's ironic? I lost everything anyway. I lost you, and by losing you, I realized that the success I so feared losing means nothing without connection, without purpose, beyond the next achievement, the next financial record. His words reverberated in the silent studio. Marina felt a strange mix of emotions, validation that he finally recognized what she had always known, sadness for the shared loss, and a touch of hope she didn't want to admit. Gregory, what do you really want from me? He looked directly at her, the corporate mask completely absent now. A second chance. Not like before. Not as boss and assistant, not as controlling husband and submissive wife. As partners, equals. The request hung between them like a delicate, fragile, unexpected bird. A second chance at what, exactly? She asked, needing clarity. At everything. In Project Iris, to start. In our connection. In discovering who we could be, for each other, now that we are both different. Marina felt a lump in her throat. For years, she had secretly wished to hear words like these. Now that she finally heard them, she didn't know how to react. Part of her wanted to believe. Another part feared it was just a reaction to the loss of control, to the imbalance her departure had caused. It's easy to talk about change when you lose something, she said carefully. It's harder to sustain that change when you regain what you've lost. I'm not asking you to believe me now, he replied. I'm asking for the opportunity to prove, with actions, not words, that I am truly changing, that I can be the man who deserves a woman like you. A distant thunder broke the moment. Marina looked at her watch. She had a meeting with a client in half an hour. I need to prepare for an appointment. Of course, he stood up immediately. I don't want to interrupt your work. He walked towards the door but stopped before leaving. Think about my proposal, the professional one at least. Project Iris really needs you. I will, Marina promised. When he left, she remained still for a few minutes, trying to process what had happened. Gregory Vance, the man who never admitted mistakes, had come to her to acknowledge his flaws, to offer an egalitarian partnership, to ask for a second chance. It was more than she had ever expected, and yet she felt cautious. People don't change overnight. And Gregory was not just anyone, he was a corporate titan, accustomed to shaping the world to his will. Could he truly adapt to a different dynamic? Could he truly see her as an equal, respect her boundaries, value her newfound independence? In the days that followed, Marina immersed herself in work, trying to keep Gregory and his proposal in the background. But the USB drive with the Project Iris files constantly called to her. One night, she finally gave in to curiosity and opened the files. There were her original sketches, her notes, her user experience flowcharts, so familiar and yet now seen with new eyes, the eyes of an independent designer, no longer constrained by corporate expectations. Almost without realizing it, she began to revise the designs, to refine flows, to reimagine interfaces. There was so much she would do differently now, with the confidence and freedom she had gained. She worked through the night, lost in the creative process, completely redesigning the user experience of the Iris system. In the morning, she sent an email to Gregory with the simple subject, Iris New Vision. She attached the new designs, without explanations, without conditions, just her pure work, speaking for itself. The response came almost immediately. Extraordinary. Can we meet to discuss? They agreed to meet on neutral territory, neither in her studio nor at the company. They chose a small restaurant in Soho, a neighborhood they both cherished in their early years together, when they were still students exploring the city. He was already waiting when she arrived, sitting at a discreet table at the back of the Japanese restaurant. No suit. Again, just a dress shirt and jeans. Gregory the corporate world rarely saw. Your designs are brilliant, he said as soon as she sat down. Cleaner, more intuitive, more human. Thank you. I worked with total freedom, without thinking about costs or implementation deadlines. It's an ideal vision, not necessarily practical. It's perfect, he affirmed, and we're going to implement it exactly as it is. She looked at him, surprised. Really, no cuts, no adaptations to reduce costs. No cuts. This project has always been special, Marina, not just a product to generate profit. It's something that can truly make a difference in people's lives. It deserves the best we can offer. It was the idealistic Gregory speaking, the young engineer she had fallen in love with, not the calculating CEO he had become. Marina felt a wave of nostalgia, quickly followed by caution. That sounds different from you, from the Gregory I've known in recent years, at least. He smiled faintly. I'm trying to reclaim parts of myself that were lost along the way. It's not easy. Sometimes I find myself falling back into old habits, but I'm trying. Marina, really trying. The waiter approached to take their orders. Gregory ordered without consulting the menu. He still remembered her favorite dishes at that restaurant, she realized with surprise. "So, would you accept," he asked when they were alone again, "to work on the project as an external consultant?" Marina considered the proposal. It was an opportunity to complete something significant, something that could truly impact the world positively, and the idea of doing it on her own terms was tempting. "Yes, I accept, but with a few conditions. I'm listening. First, total creative autonomy. Second, formal recognition of my contribution in all official project materials. Third, freedom to assemble my own team if necessary." Gregory nodded without hesitation. "All of that is fair and deserved. Anything else?" Marina took a deep breath. "Yes, I want your word that this is just a professional project, that you're not using Iris as a pretext for something else." His gaze fixed on hers, intense and direct. "I won't lie, Marina. I hope that working together again will allow us to reconnect. But I respect your terms. I respect your boundaries. If all we have is a productive professional collaboration, it will be more than I deserve." His honesty surprised her. The old Gregory would have been more strategic, more calculating in his approach. "Then we have an agreement." She extended her hand, formalizing the professional understanding. He accepted, holding her hand for a moment longer than necessary. The physical contact, even so casual, sent a wave of memories, of the first touch, the first kiss, of thousands of intimate moments they had shared over the years. "An agreement," he agreed, finally releasing her hand. In the following weeks, they established a work routine that surprised Marina with its fluidity. Twice a week, they met in her studio to discuss the project. Other communications occurred via email or video conference. Gregory rigorously kept his promise of creative autonomy. When they disagreed, they discussed with respect, each genuinely listening to the other's point of view, something rare in the past. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Marina began to lower her defenses, to trust that the change in him might be real, not because he said the right words, but because his actions consistently supported those words. He listened, he respected. He acknowledged his mistakes when he made them. He gave her credit publicly, not just in private conversations. One particularly productive afternoon, after finalizing a series of prototypes that would be tested with real users, Gregory surprised Marina with an unexpected question. "How about dinner with me this weekend?" She looked at him, cautious. Say as colleagues celebrating a project milestone or as two people rediscovering each other, he replied honestly. "No agendas, no expectations, just dinner and conversation." Marina hesitated. Part of her wanted to accept immediately, while another part feared falling back into old patterns. "I'm seeing someone," she said, testing his reaction. It was a small lie, but a necessary one. She wanted to see how he would handle the possibility of her having moved on. His expression visibly fell, but he quickly recovered. "I understand. I hope it's someone who values you as you deserve. No anger, no possessiveness, no manipulation to make her feel guilty. Just genuine acceptance of her choice." "Actually," she confessed, touched by his reaction, "I'm not seeing anyone. I just wanted to see how you'd react." He seemed relieved, but also slightly hurt by her lack of trust. "A fair test, considering our history. So dinner?" "Yes," she finally decided, "but somewhere new. Nothing that brings back too many memories. I know the perfect place. A small restaurant in Islington, recently opened. Contemporary British cuisine." On Saturday night, Marina prepared herself with a care she hadn't dedicated to her appearance in a long time. She chose a teal dress that highlighted her eyes, her hair loose in soft waves, light but careful makeup. Looking in the mirror, she saw not only the efficient assistant she had been for years, nor the reborn designer of recent weeks, but a synthesis of all the Marinas she had been: passionate student, dedicated wife, determined professional, rediscovered woman. Gregory picked her up punctually at 8. He wore dark trousers and a blue shirt, elegant without the excessive formality of corporate suits. The restaurant was exactly as he had described: small, cozy, with an intimate atmosphere without being overly romantic. Dark wood decor, soft lighting, ambient music at the perfect volume for conversation. "How did you discover this place?" she asked, genuinely curious. The Gregory she had known in recent years only frequented high-profile restaurants, places to see and be seen. Robert's recommendation, actually. He said I needed to experience places where real people eat. Apparently, I've been living in a bubble. His ironic self-awareness made him more human, more accessible. They talked about Project Iris, naturally, but also about literature, films, recent events. To Marina's surprise, Gregory was reading a novel she had mentioned liking years ago, a small connection rescued from the past. "You seem different," she observed, as they savored dessert. "A tapioca pudding with passion fruit syrup." "I'm trying to be," he replied. "Or perhaps I'm just allowing myself to be who I always was, beneath the layers of defense and control." "And how has this rediscovery been?" "Frightening, liberating. Like discovering I've been holding my breath for years and can finally breathe deeply." The metaphor touched her. She too had felt that way when she left Vance, when she resumed her creative work, when she reclaimed her identity. "What exactly happened, Gregory? What prompted this change?" He reflected for a moment, swirling his glass of red wine between his fingers. "Your departure was the catalyst. Seeing you leave, so calm, so determined. I realized I had lost something infinitely more precious than contracts or shares. I lost the only person who truly knew me, who saw me as I was, not as the CEO, not as the tech genius, just Gregory." He paused, searching for the right words. "And then I realized I myself had caused that loss, that I spent years treating you as an extension of myself, not as a complete and separate human being. The arrogance of that, the stupidity of that, it was overwhelming." Marina watched him, impressed by his raw honesty, something she had never seen in him. "And then, like an idiot, I tried to blame you when things went wrong. I accused you of sabotaging the company when you had dedicated your life to protecting it. It was my lowest point, Marina. The shame I felt afterward, I still feel, is indescribable." "You were under extreme pressure," she offered, surprised by her own generosity. "That's no excuse. Pressure doesn't create character. It only reveals it. And what was revealed about me in that moment was not pretty." They were silent for a few moments, absorbing the conversation, the shared moment of vulnerability. "What do you want now, Gregory? Really want?" "Redemption, perhaps," he replied honestly. "The chance to be a better man, a better partner, if you ever allow me that position in your life again. Or just someone you can respect, even from afar. And the company, the projects, the empire? They still matter. It would be hypocrisy to say otherwise, but the perspective has changed. They are no longer the center of everything, the ultimate purpose. They are means, not ends. Means to create something meaningful in the world." Marina felt a connection she hadn't experienced in years, not with the powerful CEO, but with the idealistic young man who wanted to change the world with technology, who spent nights awake discussing how to democratize knowledge, how to use innovation to improve lives. At the end of the night, he drove her home. At the apartment door, there was the inevitable tension of the farewell moment. Marina felt her heart race, a mix of old desire and newly acquired caution. "Thank you for dinner," she said, maintaining a safe distance. It was surprisingly pleasant. "Can we do it again?" he asked Yi-Chan without pressure, just offering the possibility. She considered for a moment. "Yes, but slowly, Gregory, one step at a time. That's all I ask," he smiled. "Good night, Marina." No kiss, no touch, just a prolonged gaze, laden with history, with possibilities. He waited until she was safely inside before driving away. In the weeks that followed, they established a cautious rhythm: work on Project Iris during the day, occasional dinners on weekends. Slowly, Marina allowed the emotional distance to lessen. Gregory proved, day after day, that his change was genuine, not perfect. There were still moments of impatience, of excessive control, but the effort was visible, consistent. Project Iris advanced rapidly under the new dynamic. Marina's creative freedom, combined with Gregory's technical vision, produced impressive results. The development team, initially skeptical about the new configuration, soon yielded to the evidence that the system was becoming something extraordinary, more intuitive, more human, more effective. One Friday afternoon, 3 months after the collaboration began, Gregory appeared in the studio with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. To celebrate, he explained, at Marina's questioning look. We just received the field test results. Iris exceeded all expectations. Doctors are enthusiastic. Patients feel safe and understood by the system. It's a complete success. Marina smiled genuinely. The project had become a renewed passion for her, a way to use her talent to create something truly useful for the world. So that's wonderful. Gregory poured the champagne, handing her a glass. Their fingers briefly touched during the transfer, sending that familiar electric current that had never truly disappeared between them. To you, Marina, he raised his glass. The brilliant mind behind Iris's soul. To us, she gently corrected. To the partnership. They clinked glasses, the sound echoing in the silent studio. Marina watched Gregory over the rim of her glass. He seemed more relaxed, more at peace with himself. The lines of constant tension that had marked his face for years were softened. His eyes, once always calculating the next move, now seemed truly present in the moment. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing her contemplative gaze. "How people change. How sometimes you have to lose something to truly value what you had." "Some lessons are too painful," he agreed, "but necessary." They were silent for a moment, soaking in the atmosphere of celebration and reflection. "And now," she finally asked, "the project is practically complete. Our formal collaboration will end in a few weeks." The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. "Now," he placed his glass on the table, cautiously approaching her. "Now is when I ask if what we've rebuilt is limited to Iris, or if there's room to rebuild something more." Marina felt her heart quicken. For months, they had carefully danced around this question, focusing on the professional, allowing the personal to emerge only in small moments, in prolonged glances, in conversations that stretched late into the night. "I'm scared," she finally admitted. "Scared that we'll fall back into the same patterns. Scared of losing myself in your orbit again." "A fair fear," he acknowledged. "I can't guarantee perfection, Marina. I can only promise that I am committed to never taking you for granted again, to see you, truly see you, every day." He extended his hand, gently touching her face, the first intimate contact in over 4 years. "And more importantly, I promise to support your independence, your career, your identity separate from mine. I don't want you to be my shadow again. I want you to shine with your own light." His words touched something deep inside her, an old wound that was beginning to heal. Marina allowed herself to lean slightly into his touch, her eyes closed for a moment. "Let's try," she finally whispered. Slowly, without rushing, building something new, not trying to recover what was. "That's all I ask." He leaned in, hesitant, silently asking permission. Marina closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a soft, exploratory kiss, like a first kiss between people who knew each other intimately and yet were discovering each other anew. 6 months later, the official launch of the Iris system was an event widely covered by the specialized media, an artificial intelligence system for medical diagnostics that combined technical precision with a human, accessible, understandable interface. In the presentations, Gregory made a point of highlighting Marina as a co-author and visionary of the project, not as his ex-wife, not as his ex-assistant, but as a brilliant professional in her own right. Marina's studio thrived, with a small but talented team of designers. The collaboration with the Vance Group continued on new projects, but always maintaining the independence that had become fundamental to her. Sometimes they worked together, sometimes separately, but always with mutual respect. As for their personal relationship, it evolved at its own pace. Dinners, weekend trips, long conversations. They rebuilt trust, brick by brick, day after day. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, moments of tension, old habits occasionally resurfacing. But there was also an honesty that had never existed before, a willingness from both of them to face problems, to communicate needs and boundaries. One Sunday afternoon, a year after that first reunion in the studio, they were on the balcony of Marina's apartment, watching the sunset over the city. Gregory held her hand casually, a gesture that had become natural between them again. "You know what I realized," he said, breaking a comfortable silence. "What?" "That we were never truly partners before. In the beginning, we were passionate lovers building a dream. Then, we became boss and subordinate, even in marriage. Now, for the first time, we are truly equals." Marina reflected on the observation. There was truth in it. For the first time, she didn't orbit around him. They orbited around each other, in balance. "Some people need to lose everything to find balance," she replied, gently squeezing his hand. "And others need to find themselves before they can truly find someone," he completed, looking at her with a mix of admiration and love that had never been so genuine. The sun disappeared on the horizon, painting the London sky in shades of orange and purple. The city where they had lost and found each other again stretched out below them, vibrant, imperfect, full of possibilities, like the love they had rediscovered. Not a fairy tale, but something real, hard-won, earned. Marina rested her head on Gregory's shoulder, feeling the solidity of his presence, not as an anchor that held her captive, but as a safe harbor from which she could set sail for her own adventures, knowing she would always have a place to return. "We're just beginning," she whispered, both to herself and to him. And for the first time in many years, the future seemed not only promising, but truly hers, theirs. A future they didn't need to obsessively control, but which they could build together, day after day, choice after choice, with the wisdom of those who had lost everything and, in the process, found what truly mattered.